YouTube, what's going on? It's Richard, founder of Short-Term Rental University and Airbnb Superhost. Today we're filming on my balcony overlooking town of Jackson. I want to talk a little bit about an Airbnb that I stayed in over Memorial Day weekend. There was really a lot that we could all learn from. These are items that are really easy to correct, but also really easy to overlook. And while I'm sure that the host was well-meaning and well-intentioned and quite successful based on his reviews, there's just a few things that would make an experience there so much more enjoyable. And I want to share those with you so that we can all make sure that we're paying attention to the little details and focus on the guest experience, because at the end of the day, that's what hosting is all about. I know it's so much better if guests can check in during the day, people can see their way around, people can see how beautiful everything is, but unfortunately a lot of times people have to work a full day and then drive out, maybe battle some traffic, and they get there at night. That night check-in at all times can be problematic, and if you can avoid it, you should. Just because nothing good ever happens when you can't see. Just seeing is helpful. In our particular case, we arrived, it was late, it was dark, a lot of traffic, and we were just frustrated carrying stuff, trying to get in. And I was really excited to hear that they had a smart lock. I wanted to test that as a guest. Only, boom, hashtag fail. It was just an awful experience. It did not work at all. There was a little keypad. It turns out it was the August that I was thinking about putting in my property, and I'm not going to do it because my experience was just so bad. But there's this little keypad and you were pushing the numbers and those light up, but again, it's pitch black, and we kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And what I kind of thought was maybe the batteries inside the unit had failed and so it couldn't turn the lock. This must have been something that's occurred in the past, because thankfully the host was thoughtful enough. He had a key hidden, and so we were able to figure out where that key was and get inside, and all wasn't lost. But you can imagine that 15 minutes of frustration carrying stuff, kids screaming and whatever, we just want to get inside and unpack and rest, was just awful. So if you're going to use smart locks, make sure that you change the batteries frequently enough. If you use smart locks, do like this host did and make sure you have a key hidden and communicate that up front. And then as best as possible, if you welcome guests at night, make sure that it's really well lit so you can see the key, you can see where you're putting the key, and you're just not sitting there blind with like your phone in one hand and luggage in the other hand and trying to get in. That's just a bad first impression. Our very second impression was we had a refrigerated bag, we had brought items, milk and yogurt and things that we wanted to eat and we wanted to put in the refrigerator. And to our surprise, we opened the refrigerator, and while it was kind of unexpected and nice in some ways that there was a fully stocked refrigerator, on the other hand, it was kind of yucky. There was all these half-empty bottles of milk and mayonnaise and mustard and ketchup, and it was just an overwhelming amount. And yes, it was nice and it could have saved us money, and I'm sure some people would appreciate it, but it didn't seem that clean. It didn't seem that inviting. In fact, my girlfriend was so skeeved out that she moved all the stuff off of one of the shelves, stacked it in the rest of the fridge, and just cleared one empty space where our clean, fresh stuff could go. And we really wanted nothing to do with the rest of the stuff in the refrigerator. That might just be us. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, wow, this is great. There's a half full jar of dill pickles and some orange juice and a trace of wine, and here's some mayonnaise. But I think overall, people that are looking to stay at an Airbnb are also looking for cleanliness, and hospitality is really making the place ready for you, the guest, not for all the former guests just leave whatever's there, or the owner just leaves whatever's there. And so we just kind of felt that more attention could have been paid to prepare the place for us. So similarly, the place just wasn't particularly clean in the spots that weren't obvious. And what I mean by that is the place was actually very clean throughout, but then there were just afterthoughts. And that's the whole point of this video, is that these are really easy to overlook. Maybe you don't think they really matter, and they probably don't matter in the big scheme. But since we're trying to be the best super host possible and make as much money as possible, get the best reviews as possible, you don't want to offend anyone. Even if only 1 out of 100 guests thinks this is gross or bad, that's probably too high a risk. And so I'm going to talk about something that we found, just a little bit unnecessary. Not the end of the world, but it doesn't need to be that way. And what I want to talk about is ashes. So in two situations, one, we went to a beautiful place to sit outside, unbelievable place to enjoy a glass of wine at the end of the night or whatever, and in the middle of it was an ashtray. Thankfully there weren't cigarette butts or used, half-consumed cigars or anything, but there was just a lot of ashes, and it just didn't look clean. It wasn't inviting. Now, maybe if we were smokers, that would just be fantastic, or we wouldn't even notice, but you have to assume that not everyone is a smoker, not everyone wants to look at it, and people with kids don't really want their kids playing with it. So if there's anything questionable like that in your property, just clean it or remove it or put in your guide where it is. You don't have to just leave it front and center. And likewise, it was great that there was a grill, but the entire grill was filled with ashes. So I don't know when it was last cleaned, but I didn't really want to go away on vacation to an Airbnb and clean someone else's grill. I just wanted to grill. So this next one's a little bit of a fine line, and it's really hard to know where it is, but let's talk about the supplies. The kitchen was incredibly well stocked. I mean, there was everything. There was so much that none of it was accessible, and you couldn't find anything, and you couldn't really use it. You'd open up drawers and there was just dozens of spatulas and knives, and if you opened up drawers and you were looking for a pot or a pan, it was just stocked. And it actually made it really uncomfortable because we didn't really want to go digging through all this stuff, and it actually, instead of enhancing our cooking experience, deterred from it. And likewise, when I did go I finally cleaned the grill, got rid of all the ashes. I wanted to go cook our dinner, and there was charcoal and a fire starter and the grill and everything was ready. But in this really well-stocked kitchen, there was no like igniter or flame or even matches or anything. And I was just bewildered. Here there was smoking ashtrays and the grill and a really well-stocked kitchen, but the thing that I needed just to light the charcoal that they provided, I couldn't do, and that stopped me out. And that was kind of a bummer. So to be clear, everything I've talked about are minor inconveniences, really nitpicky type stuff. I don't think you'd see them in the best Airbnb or at the best hotel. And since that's what we're striving for, I just want to bring them to your attention. The next thing that happened was actually a pretty big deal, which is that it was a very hot, humid weekend. I think it approached mid-90s. And I was staying on the second floor, and the air conditioner did not work. I mean, that's pretty inexcusable. When you took a look at the air conditioner itself, it was historic. It was like from the 1960s. The host must have been milking out every single last minute of this thing's lifespan, and then it happened to fail for us. And that's just a bad thing to do as hosts. If you remember what we talk about, hospitality is anticipating problems and solving them and making your guests comfortable. If your air conditioning system or your hot water heater or whatever it is that you've got mechanically is about to die, be preemptive. Buy it. It's a business expense. Put it in. Make sure that your guests, especially during busy season, Memorial Day is the start of summer here in New York. Well, there in New York. And it's going to be a long, hot summer. You know that air conditioner needs to work. If you think it's 30 years old and it's going to die, don't wait for it to die. Replace it. Preventative maintenance. Just get it out of there. And the most uncomfortable situation about the air conditioning dying was I then went to try to open the window, and they had these really antiquated shades, and they just started falling. I think we've all seen them, those old vertical blinds, and then when you move them, they like fall out of the clip, and next thing you know, I've got all these like, I'm hot, I'm sweating, I'm upset, these vertical blinds are falling, I just deal with it, I go to open the window, and the window only opens like 2 inches. So I go all the way to the other side, I deal with it, the vertical blinds are falling, I try to open that window, and that one only opens like 3 inches. And that was just bad. It's unnecessary. To the host's credit, my girlfriend contacted him immediately. He apologized. He said it was working. He was going to try and replace it. But of course, he was unable to during a holiday weekend. And that's just unnecessary. Think in advance. So in closing, we had a great weekend. This didn't spoil any of our times. We're pretty easy guests. But since I am a Airbnb YouTube guy and I'm trying to help all of us grow, the things that I see when I'm on the road and traveling, I just want to share with you. I don't want you to think that I'm so nitpicky or I didn't have a great time or anything like that. I did, and I was able to look past all of that. But at the same time, I also learned from it, and I want to share those learnings with you. I'd love to hear from you. Where have you learned when you stayed at an Airbnb? What did somebody do well or poorly? How can we improve our game? The more we share, the more we learn, the more we benefit. If you like this video, please go ahead and thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, yo, I don't know what's up with that. I'm out of here, Charles.